Hello and welcome to Bugbear's Basement. Nice to see everyone today, and we have an interesting show for you. Right now, you have my name is Chester C. Busby the Bear, and I did that again.
And
Yes, I
yeah,
will
this is
have.
DeWolf. Go ahead and grab your dice, I guess.
Yeah, well, that's right. Grab your dice because today we are talking about RPGs. And I don't mean those ones that you need controllers for. I mean real RPGs, the ones that you need pen and paper and dice and you sit around a table and socialize and have a good time. Um, so today we just have a two-man crew here right now. We got a couple others will be coming in later. But I do see we have some people down there in the chat. DeWolf, Sierra Whiskey, good morning. And who else we got there? I see Joshua, Bethany. Hello, Bethany. We have Dennis, and we have E Long. I'm assuming that's Eric Long. Hello, everyone. So, DeWolf, before we get into our conversations today, I kind of thought it'd be interesting since this is our third, I think it's our third show, to try to tell everyone a little bit about ourselves. So how did you get into all this, comic books and video games and role playing games and all these things we love to do? What got you into it? When did you start?
Wow, that's just a really great question and stuff to throw out there. I guess it all started when I mean, dare I say it, when I was 5 or 6. It's just a high imagination. I was creating stories with action figures. I grew up. We had He-Man. If you watch, as a matter of fact, there's a great show on that's now on Netflix. That is the toys that made us, and I think there's also
Oh yeah, yeah.
uh, hey, howdy, Gary,
Hey, Gary.
and various other shows that are like that. And I was watching those, going, wow, that it was exactly me, and I had those toys and those things, and there wasn't much longer till I was like in,
Guys,
in junior high, when I had put the
sorry.
toys away, about the time where I had put the toys away. Matter of fact, when some of my friends they had some books and they had some character sheets, and it was the Marvel role playing game.
Oh yeah.
And I asked them, what are you doing? It was the old TSR, had the big colorful chart. And I asked him about it, and so we had some extra time. We weren't doing something one day. We had to go sit in the library, and they opened it up, and I sketched through a character and said, "Hey, we know we were going to play this weekend." So the whole RPG thing started there. I guess within another year or two, they had us playing, meeting some other friends that they were a little bit higher in the age group, about 3 or 4 years older. They got us into D&D, and they had comic books. Actually, I didn't really uh, see or read too many comic books at that point, being young. Except, and this is an interesting point, because I've heard this from a lot of people today, asking about the old spinner racks and about having comic books right there in the
Yeah.
convenience store. And across the street, there was a big old field, and there was about 40 cows in it on any given time. And one of those sections of fields got sold right near the road,
Mm.
and a gas station went up. So now I could just run across the street. They had in a Contra video game,
Oh
so I'd
wow,
go
yeah.
waste some quarters playing Contra. And then right next to that was the magazine rack, and they got in a few comic books. And so I'd go back and forth, and then I got to the point where I'd read the back cover, right? And I then ordered them, and I had to get a money order, because that's what you had to do back then. If you didn't have to use a check, if I couldn't convince mom to get a check, I'd take some of my own allowance and get a money order, and fill all that information out, and start getting my quasars to me directly
Yes,
from Marvel.
you are the
And
Quasar guy.
that's right. And there's something that's been coming up too about that, because that's what we call that the newsprint concept. And those are on newsstand. And there's something interesting that I have not heard in any of the comic book conversations, and we could go over this again later on. in fan speak, but I do want to mention it to you now so that the fans can get the information and you can have it and put it in your back pocket for later. I found out recently that the newsstand editions um, came out a couple of weeks after the direct editions. The direct editions were going to the comic book stores, and then the newsstand editions were going out a week or two later. And when then what would happen would be that if they didn't sell the newsstand, since they're just recycling them and just trying to put stuff on the shelf and sell them for an extra 50 cents or something, they could tear off the cover, throw the rest of the comic book away, send that back to the distributor, and then they'd get a credit for that.
Yeah, that's right. I remember that.
Yeah. So then what happens is that means that all of those thousands. And here's the thing about collectability. Collectability, especially in the 80s, really into the 90s, they started making collectors issues. Well, as soon as you put collector's issue on the front of something, it almost makes it not collectible. that's
Yeah,
the
that's
that's
true. Yeah.
that's the thing about Ethan Van Sciver, the way he's made a little mini market out of Cyberfrog because he's only had it open for so long and then stopped it. Well, gold, diamonds, everything that is more rare is more valuable. So the the direct sales editions, uh, there was a lot of those, and with the newsstand editions, being that they basically destroyed many of them, they are actually more rare. So if you have the same comic book and it has a different UPC code down in the corner that says that it was a newsstand edition, it's likely twice is more valuable today than the direct edition.
Wow. And
Right.
E Long
Now, when
says
you,
says down here in the chat that his mom had a stand in the early '90s. It was tough, he said though. Yeah, no, I remember those. I remember that whole ripping
yeah,
the cover off thing too. So
yeah. And if you're talking, they're now what, $4 and $5 for, you know, uh, maybe a new Warriors, My Quasars. Oh, let's go with Cable, Punisher, X-Men. Those might only be $5 or $6 in value now. So you double that, right? 10 to 12. Still not that big of a deal, but there's some other newsstand editions that are, instead of 500, they're worth 800 because of that different uh, ability of their distribution to actually recapture them if they weren't just torn up by a kid on the shelf, but they also sold. I mean, not sold, resent back to the distributor.
well, hold that thought. I'm gonna get back. That's interesting. It sounds like you started actually with role playing and then got into comics. Is that how I'm hearing it?
Yeah, yeah. Started with role playing, then got into comic books because my friends they had comic books, and then of course we were doing
Wow,
Marvel,
that's
and
interesting.
then
And
it
that's the
shifted.
opposite.
And then once I went through comic books for a while there, and I was RPing with them at the same time. Once I got older, went off into the Air Force and just didn't have that availability. I actually went to the comic stores there for several years when I was first in San Antonio. It was a local guy that was producing Gold Digger, and I'm not sure if anybody's ever heard of the Gold Digger comic, but I was buying that. And then once I went to Australia, came back to the States, I looked for comic books, and then there was that big wah wah wah, and once 2000 hit, and I said, "What happened? What happened to my comic books?" Even by the time of 2005,
Yeah.
instead of the mid 90s, something happened to comic books, and I didn't know what it was in that kind of 10 years. In the meantime, though, I had my role playing games with me. I had books. I had dice. So we were playing. I got together a gaming group in Australia when I was down there, and we made some massive stuff. I got my wife role playing, and that
Wow.
was
I
interesting.
tried that. I
Yeah,
failed badly. Yes.
that's one of the greatest things to. And she started when we were dating. She would sit down and okay, what is this thing? If I'm gonna like you, and then I'm gonna become your fiance, then I'm gonna see what your hobbies are. And she liked the aspect of the story, the storytelling. It wasn't the part about the fighting and all that stuff, but there was
Sure.
generally some character development, and you had to discern maybe a puzzle or something that the GM was coming up with. Same thing about comic books, right? We like good character, we like good story. So here I was teaching my wife, and we had a time in Australia when we first arrived. We didn't have much to do, still didn't have much money. We didn't have our belongings, but I did have, or did we get our belongings by that point? Well, I did have Star Wars books. So we started doing a Star Wars campaign, or continued a Star Wars campaign, just her and a master. And so you can imagine when you're one on one with a player character, there is so much you can do, and we can
Yeah,
get
there
in
is.
depth. And she grew, and that master was presented himself as a good guy, but his end result was to work in the outskirts of the rebellion and end up killing and seizing control from the empire in a very dark manner. So
Yeah.
of course, when that happened, that was interesting.
Of course, that is the cool thing about role playing. Well, that's interesting, man. Let
Yeah.
me go ahead and talk to the other people that's joined us here. We have Denali. How are you doing today?
Good afternoon. Yeah, I'm good. Or good morning, or wherever you may
Well,
be.
it's good morning for me, but I do believe it's evening for you guys. And of course,
Yeah.
guys, if you notice, I have it locked on the screen here. We are watching Gary Shipman draw something very familiar. How you doing today, Gary?
I am doing really good. Thank you for having me on.
Oh no, no problem. Bugbear's Basement is a very informal thing where we come on and just talk nerd culture. Today we're going to be talking a lot about RPG stuff. You ever played any of those?
RGB, which would be
Hey,
red,
that perfect. That's perfect.
red,
Uh,
green.
no, like Dungeons and Dragons, things like that.
Oh yeah, when I was like in the 80s, I did. So yeah,
Oh yeah, same with me.
so yeah, I did.
That's cool. So what are you drawing here?
Um, I'm drawing the ship from 2001, A Space Odyssey,
Yes,
and I'm doing it
Oh
on.
yeah.
that's
I'm
Hal.
doing it on three cards, so it's a triptych, and it's just interesting to me how much it reminds me of something else.
Yes, it is, isn't it? I thought you were doing Empire actually.
Oh, really? Yeah.
I mean, not
Well,
Empire, I mean Star Wars. Yeah,
yeah. Doesn't it seem very much like that?
it does, doesn't it? But it's not. It's the robot. Yeah.
Well, it's the ship. It's the big ship that he was on.
Oh, I'm sorry.
If,
I was thinking
if
about the floating thing. Oh, I see. I see. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Oh, that's
so,
cool.
it's gonna shoot off this way.
Yeah. Oh, that's
And there was some,
interesting.
yes, definitely. Um, I don't think a lot of people have seen it. Not the newer generation. Uh, has seen 2001 Space Odyssey. I suspect that if they watch it, they're going to say this is really boring and really slow.
Well,
Not
Yeah.
allowing.
that's
You
how
know
they
why?
are.
You know why they
Uh,
would say that?
why, Gary?
Because it is.
Yeah, but I saw that when it first came out. Well, when did that come out?
Space
Anybody?
I think.
Odyssey. That was
I think
like late 70s before Star
I think
Wars,
it
like,
was
or early
18.
70s.
It was 1870
There you go. Okay,
or 1770.
something like that. Yeah, it's a little
I'm
before my time.
I'm
Um,
just
yeah. But yeah, that was a good movie. It is a slow paced movie, but it's a good story though.
yeah, it
Uh,
is.
I was I'm assuming most of the people here in the chat have probably seen that, seeing they're older. And we got Humphrey Bear down in there moderating for us. Thank you, sir.
Sorry, no, it's even older than that. 1968 was released.
Really? Okay,
Yeah,
so I must have seen that later as a when did I where I saw it in a movie theater though. They must have had a re-release. They used to do that though.
yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, I
Well,
was like
anyway,
2 years old.
But touching a thing that Todd said earlier about the wife, then girlfriend, liking the character development,
oh
it kind
yeah.
of struck upon me, because a lot of the RPG role playing top games overlaps with the comic book things, that a lot of issues that we've been having with the current writers and everything that I've now struck to me is like they're writing like those poor avatars, those hollow avatars that did everything. That when your friend does that character that he's totally awesome and he does, there's no flaws to them, and
Yes.
just take that friend and that friend becomes a writer for a comic book.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Yes.
Power gamer.
Yeah. So the
The
power
power
game.
gamer.
Yeah. So that power gamer is now writing a comic book for themselves, because a lot of the writers that we've been noticing says, oh, I'm not writing for you guys, I'm writing for myself. So they're doing their power gaming in comics. So it kind of struck to me on that. So it's kind of interesting.
No, that is. I didn't think about it that way, but you're probably right.
Wow. Yeah, when I was in San Antonio, we had I met up with a group, and we started playing Werewolf, no, Vampire the Masquerade,
Oh,
and then
yeah.
that also incorporated a little bit of the Werewolf Apocalypse. And this particular, we had an individual that was with us, and yeah, you're right. He was so annoying, and he tried to power game and push his way through and around other characters. And when we decided to change games to a GURPS superheroes, once again a superhero game,
GURPS,
things
yeah.
became very interesting with that particular character, because by that point my wife had kind of been involved just enough, and that was the first role playing that she had done. And this guy was so annoying, and we thought, okay, we know he's going to be against us. He's going to be against other players. He's already talking about making his character, more powerful, and that, if anybody else does anything, he can stop them. So we conspired. We said, all right, we're each making a 300 point, super character. What can we do? A, for us, and B, for the game. So we ended up making a character that was bonded together, to where there was a man and a woman. They shared the same physical space. There was a nuclear accident.
A Gestalt character. Oh, interesting.
Throw in some quantum theory, and so they can't be in the same space at the same time, except we added a power where it could happen. And so it was great, because the other person would go and sit on the couch and just chill out and be like, and just kind of enjoy. I guess we have smartphones back then. So if you had a smartphone, that was the time for it, but we didn't have that. So watching TV or whatever, just goofing off. And then the other person kind of maybe being sort of aware, and you could make a willpower roll and push yourself out into the game if you wanted to, or the other character could push themselves out of the game and force you in. So then the other person would sit on the couch, and the other person would have to go play through the predicament. And it was a real different dynamic. He didn't ever know how to deal with us. And then that meant that our power base was almost double in a sense. And then, of course, my character could actually pop this smaller girl kind of energy way out of his chest. And but so then all of a sudden, bang, there's just two characters that he has to deal with. And we almost directly made our characters in opposition. She had a force field. My character could phase. She had beaming bolts. My character was more hand to hand, up close. So it was really a turmoil, and he didn't like it. And same way, SJW concept, he eventually got frustrated, and he stopped playing with us because we could foil his attempts to impose his will and his agenda upon our characters. That's a funny observation, Denali.
Yeah. Well, it is interesting, right? Because I mean, we're talking about the different type of player types, but particularly the different types of DMs, right? Because you have some DMs that, like myself, who my goal is to make the game fun. That's what I want, Then you have the other DMs who their goal is to kill you. I mean, literally, that's their whole purpose. And I never understood that thinking, but I've certainly played with enough of them that play that way. So, Gary, when you guys were doing your Dungeons and Dragons in the 80s, what kind of character did you have?
I don't remember that. I mean, we did it for, there was probably a space of maybe like a year, maybe it was in a summer.
Yeah.
And we were kind of into it, but I don't know that we ever played it correctly, because I know that there's like all these books that you could get and you had to follow these rules, but like the DM would make up these crazy scenarios, and it was like anything would go on their end, and we would just kind of go through, and it was almost like this running kind of and maybe this is the way everybody played, but like I said, we weren't like super into it, and so probably he was breaking rules all over the place, but we did have a good time doing it. It was fun. It was a lot of laughs, and we would goad each other and do all kinds of stuff. And so I think we used it as a platform to I guess role play or whatever, but it mostly became just a free for all of craziness. And when people started getting too serious about it, then it kind of took away the fun,
Oh yeah.
at least for us. So, but I don't remember any of the characters that I had.
Oh, well, you succeeded in the main point, which is having fun.
Yeah.
I was really lucky. I had a great gaming group, so we had years and years of fun.
Durekin says good GMs break the rules. And that's,
yes, they do. Yeah.
And here's the subtle thing, because a lot of people don't understand is when to break the rules. It's like the same thing for rules for authors and writers, is you establish the rules and then you break them, but you only break those rules to enhance the story. Because
true. That's right.
Because if you break the rules without any purpose, without any things, then you kind of say, hey, whatever tension, whatever things happen, it's pointless, because the rules have been broken. So you only do it because it moves the story into a higher level, and also because it raises the tension and all that stuff. I'm the type, for me, when I GM my stories, it's like I'm here to have first fun and to fulfill the story and the characters, because good players and good GMs, when they work together, they develop a story together, collaborate. And I always let them know, it's like, whatever happened with the dice, that's the consequences, that's the role. Like if you get a script or whatever, that's what happens to your character, unfortunately. Like things happens, and it happens. So if we're all in agreement, sometimes a good death is a good death, and sometimes a death is a bad death.
Yeah. Oh, sometimes a character death is the most memorable thing you have.
Exactly.
I remember I had a necromancer who charged a white dragon and died horribly, but saved the whole group.
Exactly.
Yep. And if you can bring a character to the brink of death, sometimes, almost a lot. If you can bring all those characters, either some of them or all of them, to the brink of death, then that's pretty memorable, because they actually overcome. There was a challenge without getting that close, and it really wasn't even a challenge.
Well, let me back up for a minute. I mean, we jumped right in and just went off and started. Of course, I asked you, DeWolf, to tell us about how you got into all this nerdy stuff, and I'll come back and get Denali and Gary as well. But let's back up a little bit, and let's kind of introduce what we're talking about. There's several people in the chat over here that know exactly what we're talking about, but maybe everyone doesn't. We're talking about role-playing games, tabletop role-playing games, and what I have up here on the screen are some very important people for that. Now, already some of the games we talked about are not related to these gentlemen, but they came out of these guys. So what do we have up here? On the left-hand side, we have a man named Gary Gygax. Now, Gary is, I don't know, I guess the father of role-playing games. And does either one of you guys want to talk about Gary a little bit?
I don't know him.
You know? Oh, okay. Well, I'll talk about him then. Well, Gary Gygax is the creator of Dungeons and Dragons. He originally was doing. These days we have Warhammer 40K, and we have uh, the Wild West Exodus, and so many of these tabletop war games where you have little miniatures and you're fighting against each other. Well, they used to do those kind of things a long time ago. It's actually a rather old hobby, and he was into that, but he wanted to take that large table battlefield where you had many miniatures representing, depending on the genre you're playing, it could be tanks and infantry units or what have you, and fighting on the tabletop like that. And he wanted to bring it down and make it more personal. So originally he created a thing called chainmail, and chainmail is what became Dungeons and Dragons. Now, Gary here, the guy on the left, he partnered up with this guy here on the right. His name is Dave Arnson. And Dave was a writer of children's books in the 60s. And but they partnered up and they created stories. Of course, Dave Arnson here is very famous for creating Blackmore and a lot of the things with the duchies, and also I think he had some part in Greyhawk as well. And then the guy I have down on the bottom, of course, is Ed Greenwood, which most of the people in the chat probably that do play D&D probably know him best. He is the creator of the Forgotten Realms. Now, I mention these guys because they're ones that, the Forgotten Realms. They're the ones that brought us into the role playing game, and it became such a instant hit when they came out with Dungeons and Dragons in the 70s that there was just this wave of role playing games came out, and it was insane. And I remember it because I was lucky enough to have got into it very early, very similar to what you had said, DeWolf, where I had older friends that were playing it, and I got pulled in. So, and I'm very happy for that because after that, of course, we had the D&D stuff. Here's the original red box.
Did they indoctrinate you with all of the cultish rituals and things?
Yeah, because it got so popular, then you had the fundamentals.
That's a whole nother conversation. But
there was so much controversy, that came out, and it was, it was way overblown.
Yeah, no, it was ridiculous, and they even had that Tom Hanks movie, right? But
right.
Of course, the Dungeons and Dragons spawned many types of role-playing games. It would take hours for us to go through all the different role-playing games that have come out ever since. But
sorry to interrupt, but
go ahead, Gary.
What was the Tom Hanks movie?
Oh, Myths and Monsters, I think it was called.
Myths and Monsters, yeah.
Myths and Monsters, and Tom Hanks was played a character who got too deep into the Dungeons and Dragons, and it warped his mind, and he went insane, and people almost died because it's the devil is part of the Dungeons and Dragons. It's we have to. It's part of that hateful craze against Dungeons and Dragons that initially, but there was a lot of that going on.
So that's what happened to Tom Hanks. Wow.
Yeah. Okay. All right. All right.
Yeah.
There you go.
His indoctrination to the SJWs. Be one of us, one of us, one of us.
But there was a hysteria in the 70s coming into the 80s of that. It wasn't just role-playing games. It was rock and roll, heavy metal music, and he had all that stuff. And of course, that led into Tipper Gore and Marilyn Manson later. But I don't think it's really stopped. I have a feeling these SJWs are kind of just another face of that same thing,
Oh, Elong has us in the chat with mazes and monsters. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Mazes and monsters. Yes, that's it. But that was backlash to it. But like I said, that's kind of a different conversation. It was kind of silly because it's just fun with friends. It's not that big a deal. But just to kind of get us to the point of what we want to talk about today, or at least in the background of what we want to talk about today, here on the screen, you see we have two very important role-playing games that came out after Dungeons and Dragons very shortly, actually, particularly the one on the left. We have Villains and Vigilantes, and we have the Marvel superhero role-playing game. So how many people here with me and in the chat have played either one of these games.
I've played.
I did Marvel.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, the same Marvel superheroes.
Yeah, the fast rip.
Oh, the face rip system. Yeah. Oh, so
Yep.
no one's played Villains and Vigilantes. That's what I started on, actually.
Oh no, you're old.
I am. I am. But anyway, let me put this back on Gary's drawing. That's more interesting anyway. Yeah, let's talk a little bit about Marvel, seeing as no one is into Villains and Vigilantes, although Durkin is talking about Vampire. That was a little bit later, but I think it was the early 90s, late 80s, right? But Vampire,
Yep.
of course, was a great system. Had a lot of fun with that too. So Marvel superheroes role playing game. Now, Gary, you said you played that one.
Yeah, but like I said before, all the things that we did, it's almost like we, like my friends, what we would do is we would get maybe like one of the manuals or something, and then we would just kind of have it there, and nobody would ever refer to it, and the DM would just kind of make up the make up something like on the fly almost, and say here's the environment and what character are you, and then he would kind of just pretend like he was like he was following some rule, and he would make up anything, and he would do it on purpose. He would even like make it harder for other people. Like if they rolled and he didn't like them, he would say, well, you're in this certain room, so all of your rolls are reverse. You know what I mean? Like like if it was
Jeez.
powerful, it'd be weak. And he would do it just to mess with everybody. And it was so funny. You know, we would just be rolling, laughing, doing it. So that's how we played. And we had a good time doing it. Probably weren't following the rules at all, but we had a blast.
Yeah, well, once again, it's the main point.
Yeah.
Almost
Yeah,
something.
everybody in here with us now, if you could do me a favor and, of course, hit the like button, which it seems most everyone does, but also share it out and let everyone know we're on so they can come over and join us. But yeah, so it sounds like Gary's experience was really kind of off the cuff. Now I'm having a feeling that the some of the other people here in the chat and of course my co-hosts here have a lot more in-depth opinion about the matter. DeWolf, why don't you go ahead and tell us about your Marvel role-playing experiences or opinions or what have you?
You know, a lot of my Marvel originally was done, like I say, as a young guy and as a teen, and I don't remember too much of it. We kind of had a big group. There was a lot of young guys wanting to do lots of things. I just remember that I had two characters. So depending upon the situation, they would like either you could play one or the other. Because they wanted a bigger group like the Avengers. So we each got two characters that we could kind of play through. And I remembered I got a guy who was an altered, which would be like Spider-Man, regular person, something happens to him. And that was the interesting thing. There was this random generator in that. So you could roll and you had X number of powers. And then you roll what your powers could possibly come from. And then I got claws. And of course, the first thing you think I thought of was Wolverine. And and so I thought, well, fine, we'll throw that in there. And then he got a jumping attack. So he was pouncing, or jumping ability. And then he got shrinking all of a sudden. So so it's like, how do you incorporate being able to shrink small and then jump with claws and then an ensnarement trap? And so I threw him down in like a jungle. He was an archaeologist. He was in the jungle, got his arms broken. So those were repaired, to which gave him some claws. And in this temple, then that collapsed on him, he received powers, and nearby were plants that when you threw these little pods out, they would explode into this and wrap up people in a lot of vines and tendrils. So that was kind of the big thing about the RP, and especially with the original Marvel, was that random system. Could you create a character with a bunch of random things? And we right out of the comic books, you had the ability to live that out, because since I rolled a character like that, they would take him and he'd shrink down and they'd throw him kind of fastball special
All right.
from Wolverine, at the Sentinels we were fighting, and I could claw into them and make holes for other guys to exploit, and then the other guy I got, once again, randomly, diamond skin, or could change to diamond, and invisibility, and a slashing missile type weapon. So, invisibility, well, the diamond allows him to, maneuver the light through him. So you really had to use your imagination. And I think that's what RPs really give you the ability to do. Play with your imagination. And uh, Durakan had mentioned something in the chat. This is kind of a little bit off from that. Well, no, it's not. No, it's not. Because at some point later on, from playing this game with these friends, I meet them up later playing D&D, after I was back from the Air Force, and they were doing some vile things with goblins and orcs. And I think one of them was a half orc, and he was acting vile to NPCs. And I went, "What happened?" You learn about people from role playing games. You can place them into a moral situation and see how they're going to do it. Do they outright kill the villain, kill an NPC? Do they try to negotiate with them? Do they fight as hard as they can up until a point and then step over the edge and kill them, because they know it's either do that or risk other innocents. So you learn a lot about people's moral character by placing them within this fictitious world, but it's from a very first person perspective. And that's something that no other medium allows you to do.
Yeah, no, it's that's a major point about it. I mean, actually, role playing games, board games they offer something that I think the young generation's missing in many ways. Sitting around a table and talking to each other and interacting with different personalities and having to work together, it teaches you social skills. And sitting in front of a video game, which I do love, I love video games, but sitting in front of a video game by yourself is very impersonal. And I think a lot of this. Internet chatting and interacting with each other where you don't see each other's face, you don't have to worry about consequences. It's a big factor in a lot of the nonsense we see day to day throughout the internet. And these role-playing games where you sit down, and the board games as well, it teaches you about how to be a good person because you're forced to.
Yeah.
And and that's one of the major benefits of it. And it also builds your brain and teaches you how to speak and how to think, and a lot of things like that. They're very useful, actually, educationally anyway.
Yeah. The world of darkness can really stretch your concepts.
It can, and in a good way.
If
Yeah,
played right.
if played
And
right.
I
Now,
mean,
of course.
yeah.
Well,
And
that
what I mean by that, it's not so much the rules of the games, but the interactions between the players, not just with the players along themselves, but the players and the GM interaction. Because a lot of the times, like we mentioned just briefly earlier in this conversation, there are power games. There's people that do abuse the system to gain the system to overcome whatever, to the point that they destroy whatever setting, or it's the GMs themselves that, they're bent on, sticking to the number, sticking to destroying them, that they forget the reason why they're GM. They're the storytellers trying to tell the stories to the players and their character and have a good time. And if you lose sight of that as a storyteller, as a GM, then you're kind of forgetting the fact of why you guys are playing that.
true.
And it's always have full disclosure. Say, hey, your character may die, but we're gonna all be good nature about it.
Mhm.
As
Hey,
long
Gary.
as
Yeah,
Mhm.
go ahead.
No, go ahead.
All right. Hey, Gary. You when you were playing the Marvel role playing game with your friends, I'm sure you weren't playing it correctly. Uh, what character did you play? Do you remember?
Um, we do all kinds of things. We'd mash them up and do all kinds of things like that. I don't remember anything particular. The most fun that we had was like Rick was there too. So
Oh yeah.
yeah, and so there was another guy named David, and he was so into it, like he really immersed, and he thought he was the characters, and we would just be the person, the DM or whatever would be all just messing with them, and so if David was Thor, he would go in there and he's trying to be all noble and everything. It was just so much fun. But it I guess what it did for us is it made like a catalyst for us to go into a scenario that was mostly in our minds,
Mm.
And we would just imagine these scenarios that we would in, and how would we fight it through. And then also, because Rick and I didn't, and maybe even the DM didn't take it so serious, but then like David and maybe there are a few others that really did, and like this is going to be something that's this is going on my record or something like that. I don't know how you keep track of that stuff, but because I never kept track of anything, like, oh, here's the character I have or whatever. Did it go from like game to game, or could you retain that character as long as you were in your group? Everyone knew, like on the honor system, right? This is what
Oh,
his powers are, or
oh, of
something like that.
course. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
So, but you would take it from one game to the next, right? Like it'd be like next week,
Sure.
you could bring up your, yeah. Okay. So it's been a long time. I mean, we're talking like back in the 70s when we were doing it. So that's a long time ago. And I haven't played those games, but the memories are awesome. Even Rick and he'll say a phrase. He'll say a phrase and I know exactly what he's talking about because it was from one of the games.
Well,
Like, go ahead. I'm sorry.
no. Go finish.
Well, I mean, it doesn't mean anything to anybody here, but like if you come on my stream and Rick's there, say you have a big egg.
You have a big egg. Write that down, Denali. Write that down.
You have a big egg.
You have a big
I thought you were talking about his head. He has a big head.
Wow.
Have a big
Well,
egg.
but that's the thing, though. These games create lifelong memories, right? Um, and that's one of the great things about them. You know what we should do, guys? Um, I haven't really thought about it, but we should do a stream sometime, and I will run a Marvel superhero game, and everyone can play a character. And so, Gary, who do you want to be?
Oh, I'll be the Watcher.
No, you won't. No, you won't. No, more
Super
standard
cocky style.
Avenger type.
Just to
That's
watch.
cheating. Gary's a cheater.
Don't you know that?
I'll be Galactus.
No, I'm gonna and choose an Avenger.
You're gonna have to go to someone else. I'll take the
Yeah.
leftover.
But no, I'm just talking offhand. But it actually might be fun to do like a fan speak or just do Bugbear's Basement Marvel superhero game night. I'd be happy to run that.
Yeah, we
Neat.
can do that, maybe every other week or something. And that could showcase, like card games and all that stuff and kind of learn how to play the games if you don't know how to play the game, whether it's, the board game or the card games or the RPG games and systems, and just have fun of it, and mistakes will happen and should have all good laughs.
So, what does the chat think? You guys want to see us have an all-star fan Marvel superhero thing with Gary playing something outrageous? So the booster says
the thing that was funny is that the guy David, he was so into it. He was Thor, and he was in love with Starfire, and so we
there you
would
go.
build, like the DM would build the whole world knowing that David was going to be there, and he would just make the whole thing a big just to mess with him, and like all of us would, like, things would happen and they'd be like random and weird, and then he would make Starfire fall in love with someone else. or something like that.
Oh, it's so mean.
David really angry. It was funny.
Well, speaking of David, I think we all have had a David before. My David was a guy named Rob, actually, and love Rob. And I don't know if I should say this publicly, but oh well, I'm saying it. And I was with a group of guys, and we played years and years together. We played D&D and Marvel and well, pretty much everything we could try. But we had a long-running D&D campaign, and Rob had a character he called Lady Hawk. Wasn't particularly originally. Took it out of that movie with Rutger Hauer, which was a cool movie. But he had Lady Hawk, and it was a druid, so therefore it had shape changing and stuff. And but he gets so serious about that character. He was actually going to the library. He was studying druids. He was just so crazed about this character that the group had a side private meeting, and we said, hey, we got to end this, man. He's way too deep into it. So I was elected to kill the character. It was no, it was seriously an intervention, and no joke, man. And so I was, of course, the one chosen to do it. So, but it was a high level campaign. I mean, this is the old D&D, and I think we were over 20th level. We weren't at the max 36, but we were 20 something. It was really high level campaign, and I basically created this dungeon that we had to go into, and I figured, all right, well, I'll just bring a overpowered red dragon at the group, and I will focus my big attacks on him, and it will be subtle. The problem is they dropped that red dragon in 3 rounds. So I kind of had a panic moment. I was like, oh, what am I? How am I going? Okay, another one arrives. So all of a sudden, there's another red dragon. I eventually did kill him, and then everyone refused to resurrect him. So he was all bummy and pouty for months. But it was a weird moment. That's the only time I've ever had to have an intervention. But he was getting crazy about it.
Oh, that's funny. But something that kind of struck me again as listening is the memorable moments are the moments that the player reacts to the situation. You remember more about the reactions. For example, for me, my memorable moment was the reaction towards others, toward players towards my character's actions. Where, have you ever? I think everybody's seen Silence of the Lamb. How Jodie Foster reacted to Anthony Hopkins' Hannibal compared to Edward Norton's reaction to Hannibal and Red Dragon. You see the difference where one is very memorable and one is not very so memorable because of the reaction of those two characters toward that same character. So for me, I think it was like it solidified my character and what my character was based on the reaction because they had the same reaction to my character. And to put it in context, my character, I was playing White Wolf Vampire, and mine was Ventru, which is like the nobility and all that stuff, just to give like a overview. And my character was like all cloak and shadows and smoke, so they feared me just from my presence alone, or my character's presence alone. And it was like, yes, I did it right, where they got the right feeling and mood and react appropriately to the character. Because there's some players that are like, whatever. But the way the other players in the group reacted to my character, they were very intimidated, very afraid. Where it's like, yes, now you know what a Ventru is, and this is what it is. And it was a fulfillment because one, you got it right, like how an actor or a writer or an artist get that piece of work right. And the other one was the moment of it. Kind of like how everybody reacted to Heath Ledger's Joker, where they said, this sucks. And then when they saw in action how it performed, it blew everyone away. So
yeah,
I think it's tied to that, because the stronger the emotion, the stronger the impression.
Yeah, well, he wasn't really a Joker per se, but that was a great performance when he was in the police station there and with Commissioner Gordon. I mean, that is one of the best movie acting scenes in any movie I've ever seen. That was insane performance by Heath Ledger.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And there was a point at which I was running the Star Wars group in Australia, and you set up the situation and you make this guy be such a problem for them, and then they finally you track him down and they encounter them, and this fledgling force using guy decides, okay, well, now that he's fallen down on the ground and vulnerable, I run him through, which normally that might be something you would do. Of course, in that particular universe, if someone is on the ground and helpless and then you just kill them outright, you get a dark side point, especially if you're a force using Jedi type.
Yeah.
To say that to that character at that moment, okay, you get a dark side point. And he's been avoiding it the whole time. And he goes, oh, whoa, mate, what do you mean I get a dark side point? He's a bad guy. And then the rest of the characters, they look and go, yeah, he doesn't need to be killed right now, and you killed him, so that's a dark side point. Yeah, really, those shocking moments are something. Denali's right.
Yeah, and of course you're bringing up mechanics left and right here, and that's of course what differentiates one role-playing game from another is really the mechanics. And you talk about the old D6 Star Wars with Dark Force points, or you talk about something else?
Oh no, yeah, the old D6. That's like talking about the Marvel, face rip, because
Yeah.
the new system I haven't even bothered yet to look into.
It's not as interesting, I think. It's prettier. I mean, the production values these days are amazing. But I like the old D6 system better. It was fun and simple and straightforward, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gary, I
Yeah.
meant touched on something that Gary was talking about, and he said that I think that you would get a module, and then he would run it and maybe run it. And now, although meaning your dice all of a sudden are completely backwards and things like that is pretty wild and out there. At the same time, I've been in many games, even where the GM didn't necessarily just make the story, because some of the best ones are the ones that take the characters and just say, what's your character background? What's your motivation for being in the world? And kind of develop a story out of that. Then there's the modules that Gary was talking about. And even with those, you look through the module, and you can try to run it straight, literally by the book. But the really good games, you go in there, you take this as a source material, and then you just start branching out and going off on different concepts and things, depending upon what the players do and and what's fun, which is what Gary was saying.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was fun. Man, we would be
You guys
laughing we would be laughing so hard that our sides would be hurting. We'd have to like leave the room. It was so funny. But anyways, that was just the way we did it.
Oh, well, it doesn't matter how you do it. It's all about the fun. And role-playing games are great fun, and I wish more people would play them. If they would, because you can play them in so many different ways. They don't have to be this one way or that or this other way. It's just about coming together and creating stories together and laughing and having fun. I did have a little side question I wanted to ask the chat and the group here. Have you guys ever named a dice?
No, I don't think I've named a die.
I
We,
had a
we we
die.
picked out particular ones that we knew were different.
No, I had a die I named Lola.
Lola.
Yeah, and I never touched Lola unless it was a desperate situation because I don't know what it was about Lola, but she really enjoyed rolling 20s.
And you've probably seen many dice thrown across the room.
I have. Yeah. Actually, I have a really cool little thing I do. I'm curious if you guys have ever done this. What I do, because as a DM sitting behind the screen, I'm always the DM. I don't know why. It was just kind of the way it worked out for me, I guess. But sometimes I will fudge the dice if that's going to kill that character, and I don't want him dead yet, or I don't want him dead at all. I mean, unless it's in impactful. I will do fudging, but every now and then I will have a situation where it's serious. And what I did, you remember those old little plastic cases you could get the dice in?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And I would take a D20, I put it in that case, and I leave it sitting on the side next to my screen where everybody could see it. And every now and then in a serious situation, I would take that, I'd shake it and slam it down. And so everyone could see it. So that was my, the fate of God dice type of thing. You guys ever done something like that?
Yeah. I think that I've really gotten away from the whole GM screen. And it's useful to have most of them are packed full of information, so you have it ready and available. But the idea of rolling and telling them what happened or not, I've kind of gotten more to the area of letting the dice throw out there and watching them struggle, so that you have the hand of God almost happening all the time, and it changes things up.
It's true. Yeah, I like that aspect of it. And I think a lot of DMs have come up with lots of cool ideas over the years of, making a moment impactful. And then that's part of the making a fun and memorable thing. So why don't you guys, and I'd love to hear from the chat guys, by the way, those of you listening, give us some great memories you've had and or some questions for us, and we'll certainly answer them. And of course, Booster is asking me very serious questions right here. And he says, Chester, does Lola speak to you? Does she tell you to burn things? No, Booster, she doesn't. And I lost Lola long ago to a girl.
That's funny.
It's always a
It's always
girl.
a girl, isn't it?
Yeah.
It always is, But I actually lost all my possessions to that female.
Wow.
Yeah.
No, we didn't have a Lola,
Lost
but we had the black.
too.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Gary.
I'm sorry, I was interrupting. I lost all mine to a female too. She's sitting right here.
Yeah, see, that's a bit different.
Yeah.
You can still find yours.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
true. She lets me borrow.
There you go. Now the problem with that female was she was smoking hot. I mean, I'm talking 10-10, and women that are 10-10 can have way too much power. I think we should boycott them.
Well, then we would have to boycott my wife.
Oh, there you go. Good boy.
Ooh.
See how I did that?
Good thing your wife didn't hear what you just said, Chester. You'd be sleeping outside in the mud couch.
Well, see, luckily my wife usually speaks Japanese, so
Yeah.
But let me read a couple things in the chat before we move on here. Durkin says, if you're a GM and don't want to live with the possibilities of any result that the dice may give, you really shouldn't be rolling in those situations. Oh, no. Yeah, of course, that's right. I'm just, some situations are light. Like, for instance, say we have an ambush on the road that has nothing to do with the main campaign. I don't want to wipe out the team and have a TPK just because of some little bandit, attack. So I will fudge in those situations. When we're in campaign or story, whether it's something I have created or something that the players have motivated toward, well, of course, it's more serious. Of course. Heroic New York or NY or Nico, I don't know. My DM's current world is a post-apocalyptic world that had simultaneously been affected by global disasters, i.e. overgrowth, extreme heats, mass flooding, random storms, etc.
That's a fun world. Yeah.
Yeah, post-apocalyptic, a natural one too. E Long says, we'll save against the Dragon's Aura of Fear. The whole group got 19s and 20s on the die. That was memorable. Yeah, it is cool when you see just things that break ratio rules, but yet they happen. I've seen them too. Let's see, read one more here. Durkin says, die rolls are supposed to be only when there is a possibility of failure or success. If there should be none, there should be no dice rolls. Yeah, well, that's kind of a modern thinking, Durkin. I'm coming from the 70s role playing where everything was about math and numbers. These days they've
It was
kind
very
of these days they've cut like almost all the mechanics out of a lot of these games. It's just different thinking. Anyway, any memorable stories, DeWolf?
You know, much like that one, the 90s and 20s. I remember boiling that down to basically just being one person and telling the GM, okay, I want to do this. You know, there's we were in a boat, a ship, and we were being chased by other ships, and there were, you know, cannons were blazing away, and we had to get away, and what are we going to do? And I had the bow and arrow, and it was a Renaissance era game. So very few people had bow and arrows, but mine was kind of out of time a little bit. And so I thought, well, hey, wait a second. Can I, if he's that close, the ship is that close, which usually they were, can I see where the anchor is set with the lever that holds the anchor in place? Okay. Yeah. You can see that. Okay, fine. You know, I'm going to knock an arrow and try to dislodge the lever. And he's like, okay, whatever. You know, that's an extreme shot, but you're a good archer, you know, whatever, roll the dice, you know. And he's mounting up the possibility of me being able to pull this off. And yeah, much like that, the whole rest of the whole rest of the team has been trying to figure out, how are we going to get away? What are we doing? They're fighting, they're shooting, everybody's embroiled in some sort of a dire, you know, mechanic of what's happening. And I just fire and roll a bunch of dice, and they go, what? You know, and you get like a bunch of high dice out there. And then the GM just looks at it and goes, okay, never mind. Don't even bother counting. I can tell by all the high numbers, you got it. And so then they're like, what? And he goes, okay, so fine. That means the anchor falls. And if the anchor falls, then the ship gets, you know, yanked in place, and your ship gets away, and everybody's going, yay, that was awesome. That was the greatest way to get out of that situation. And the GM sits there just, you're confounded, because you knew he had something. I've been a GM. He knew he had something else going along, and you just foiled him. And then the dice, even just like in your face dice, right? Yeah.
No, those are cool moments. And by the way, that person in there saying hello, brother, is my actual brother.
Oh,
Cool.
okay.
Yeah.
Tim Busby. That's my actual brother. Yeah.
Cool.
We call each other brother a lot. I don't know. I don't know what it is. I say it all the time. Edwin says it all the time. It's I guess it's just something we do. Huh?
It's a brotherly thing, because we share in a fraternity. Fraternities call each other brothers, you know.
I guess. Yeah. I kind of do it all the time. I think it's just part of my my accent that I picked up over the years. That's the problem. I've lived so many places. I have this generic English, but I guess I have a few of those little foibles in my English.
Yep,
So, yeah, as Pixel was thinking about joining us, but he's got a big event tonight, so we're all going to be enjoying that. Pixel Trader is doing the drawn and quartered fan version after Mike does his. Have you guys seen that drawn and quartered? I mean, Gary does it. You got to be in it today, Gary. You got to beat everyone today.
He's just practicing.
True.
And he's muted, so he's
okay.
probably talking, or he's not. But I noticed that Mike did an earlier stream to upgrade his internet. He's like, I'm not gonna lose again, so I'm upping the game by upping the fidelity of my internet by updating upgrading my internet to the fastest. So it was crystal clear, the earlier stream that he was testing out. We'll see 10 p.m. Eastern, drawn and quarter, whether he'll win tonight.
Yeah, no, I hope he does get
it
it fixed, because that is what's killing him. It's absolutely his internet, because you can't see it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just too bad to work on something like that and be dragged down by technicalities.
Oh, I know how he feels. Pixel knows how he feels. We did system checks on my internet the other day, and I'm on a dinosaur internet system here. It's quite sad. You can all feel pity for me.
So
Yeah, Durkin said Mike streams HD stream went blurry. Yeah, it's unfortunate. Yeah.
To get back to where you were at before, basically talking about RPs instead of streaming, but also way back in the beginning, you discussed D&D and what that meant, and something came up there through the chat that happened, and that was the concept of dice and technical things versus diceless, and whether you should even roll. And that is funny because way back when, especially in the Gary days too, there was a lot that was really numbers based. There was so much that everything you did had a number, had a percentage chance, had a THAC0 roll, your chance to hit armor class 0,
Right.
and there was a lot of dice, a lot of technicalities, and there are still games today that do that. They boiled it down to whether or not you're doing one sword swing versus one hit and firing one arrow and one spell, and it was very technical. And the miniatures were a big deal because then all the miniatures were on the table. They were on a hex map or a grid map, and you moved certain numbers of spaces to reach the other opponents and whatnot, and you had to count all those spaces. And wow, I'm not sure. I know when I got involved in, well, I guess Marvel was a little bit, the original Marvel did that a little bit. It kind of opened up away from D&D, and just called things large areas and whatnot. But it was still very mechanical in certain areas. Once the World of Darkness hit, and you're playing vampire, then things were starting to become a lot more narrative, and that was in the 90s. And of course, now they've even shucked out dice. People use playing cards for different concepts, and now there's systems out there that don't even use rock scissors paper, which is used a lot for LARPing, and then you've got systems that don't even have that anymore. It's just, how's your story going? You have to give up some part of your story for me to input my part of the story, which I can't wrap my head around. I need to have a world-based system somewhere that has a mechanic in it, much like our own.
Yeah, no, the systems have changed these days. I mean, you got Fate. There's a lot of storytelling-based systems that have no dice or anything whatsoever, which is fine. I really wouldn't call that a traditional role-playing game, but as long as people are having fun, I'm fine with it. But I think when they came out with Vampire the Masquerade or the World of Darkness, that was very in a oh wow, I can't say it. That was very
innovative.
Thank you, and I'm usually one helping you. Thank you, Denelli.
Yeah.
But it was, and I think it changed things. It brought in some good ideas, and I actually have from White Wolf. I have the Aberrant game, which is based on the World of Darkness system. But of course, that's a role playing game, and I love that system. That is beautiful.
Yeah.
So-
Speaking of that, how crazy that they had to put in the 5th edition version of the Vampire the Masquerade that if you self-identify as a Nazi, this game isn't for you.
Huh?
How crazy! Yeah. So
Oh yeah, that's a new controversy. I was watching that. Yeah, go ahead and tell them about it, Denelli.
So basically, they during the middle of creation of the 5th edition Vampire the Masquerade, there was a example, of extreme political movement and all that stuff, and somebody started saying, "Hey, you're telling us that you're doing propaganda for Nazi and Nazi this and Nazi that," riling up the whole community to the point that Onyx Path and the new owners, I guess, of White Wolf or that property had to step in and say, if you self-identify as a Nazi, this book is not for you. This book is, intrusive or inclusive for all people and stripes or whatever. Again, and it's not trying to push an agenda or whatever. And it was, to that vein, I'm like saying how crazy it is that they have to put out a statement like that to calm the community.
Yeah, that was unfortunate, that whole situation. You know what that's
Yeah.
coming from, though, right?
Yeah.
I'm lost.
Well, okay. Well, I'll give a quick recap on what he's talking about. You mentioned it yourself, actually, DeWolf, just a second ago. You said LARPing. Now, for those of you who don't know, LARPing is live action role playing. And I tried it once, and it wasn't very interesting to me, but people like it, and that's cool. Um, and but these people are much more into the drama, the acting, and all they do is rock paper scissors, like DeWolf had said. But those people, they have a world of darkness system they call the Mind's Eye Theater, which is a LARPing rules, and it's so that they can role play with it. But that group has gone way left, and they are extreme SJW types. And when the pen and paper system came, the fifth edition come out here, they don't even play that. I mean, they're LARPers. They just started, going over. Of course, they're doing a big release, so they put out alpha versions and various little pieces for you to read and to kind of beta test in a way. And they just picked it apart and complained about every little thing and saying it's supporting Nazis and all this kind of stupid stuff they do all the time. And poor Onyx Path and the people involved with creating the fifth edition had to come out and try to be diplomatic and calm the situation. It's just typical nonsense, the same stuff we deal with. Yeah, we have to understand, in our community, we're not the only ones getting hit. Everybody is. Board games, video games, sports, you name it. If there's a hobby, especially a hobby that men like, it's being attacked. And White Wolf's Vampire the Masquerade is no different.
Wow. And now that you say that, that makes a lot of sense. When even back in the 90s, when I was involved in the LARP group and it was the World of Darkness, there was a lot of that. There's a lot of drama and all these personalities. And you have to understand it's an organization. So you have an administration side and you've got the game world side. Even in the administration, it was difficult to negotiate what was going on at times. And that is a beautiful picture of that ship, Gary. That looks really cool.
Oh, thank you. I had to go off because I got a phone call, but I'm back.
Yeah.
It came out nice. Yeah. It's coming out nice, huh?
Got distracted by the ship. Yeah,
I did. I got distracted by the artwork here. But yeah, it was just hard to negotiate the organization of the people. And one of the biggest things that was there, now that I think back, was the fact of the political leanings of people. And we use the term SJW. It's very emotion based and very selfish based, and that's the way they ran that organization. If you weren't within the clique, it was hard to get your player or your characters or even your portion of the group involved in what was going on, which tabletop doesn't have that for the most part. You're all there, everybody's interacting, and just chucking dice.
But it's kind of funny you say it's a clique. The same thing that's happening with the comics. They're a clique. And if you're not gelling with the clique or the group, then you don't have any jobs or you don't have any things. So where one is just, having fun and games, the other one's a livelihood. But it's the same principle behind both of those situations kind of deal. So it's kind of interesting on that end as well.
Right. And you're wanting to get people, in a tabletop game, you're wanting to get people involved. And I told Chester this a couple of days ago when we were talking, that what I've done now that I have kids, I've got a couple of close friends, another couple, they got a kid and they bring theirs over. And it's a game in which we've incorporated the kids a lot. So we're doing Marvel once again. We're back to playing good old Marvel, and the kids are able to watch the movies, watch the MCU, and then we can go ahead and they've got these characters. And to have a girl that is now 10, and you tell her you're involved in this situation, and of course she has to play up. So she's playing like she's a young reporter, and there's a crane that's falling. There's workers up there. She has the power of wind, so she can kind of fly. She can support other people using wind, and that's her base. And I ask her, "What do you do?" And here's a young girl. She hasn't been out in the world. She hasn't done anything. She hasn't involved herself in various experiences and things. But now she's got this fictitious concept, and she's driven downtown. She knows what it looks like to see people working up on buildings and stuff. And I'm describing that you got this person, he's going to fall. What do you do? And if she waits and she doesn't say anything for a second. She's thinking, well, what do I do? I said, you got the power of wind, right? Yeah. Okay. Well, and you waited. He's falling. He let go his grip, and now he's falling. So the tension, even for her, mounts, and her little face goes, "Oh no!" And you say, I want to stop him falling. With okay, roll the dice. Yeah, now you just told me what you're going to do. Now roll the dice. It's very interesting. If anyone's ever tried to role play something like that with real young minds, and I'm watching her as she grows, her ability to pick up concepts and react quicker to things is actually improving. And I recommend it.
Yeah, I did the same thing with my kids. It's a good idea. It's a lot of teaching opportunities in playing role-playing games with kids. I think they should do it in schools, actually.
Oh,
definitely.
Wow.
Yeah, no, definitely. Because they're the ones who's going to have the more fun, just watching the next generation kind of do the same dumb things we've done. But at least you're kind of guiding them a little bit better, by including them. And I think that's something that the previous generation didn't do so much. It's including them, with these sort of hobbies, these sort of teachable moments. From what I've understood from my dad's generation, my grandparents' generations, and all that, kids did kid stuff and adults did adult stuff, and those are two world parts. So that's something new that our generation and it's kind of doing now is no, let's include our hobbies with our kids, because this is what I was passionate about, and they'll get to know a little bit of me and where our values have come from as well, and all that stuff. So no, it's pretty cool. Yeah. Like Gary, he's getting his daughter to draw and hoping she'll be an artist like him.
That is cool. Yeah. I just wanted to say, Booster, you're a very sick man. Very sick. And Adrian, yes, of course, Mutants and Masterminds is probably the best I would say the best modern superhero game that's out right now. Of course, it's based on the open gaming license, so the D20 open gaming license. But yeah, Mutants and Masterminds is good. The interesting thing about Mutants and Masterminds, though, I actually prefer the first edition over the later editions, and I have the complete DC Universe version as well. Any of you guys ever played Mutants and Masterminds?
No, I've only seen it.
Yeah, I played it for a while. Yeah.
So what's the difference between the two? You said the first edition versus the second.
Well, the first edition was more similar to the old role-playing games, where they had their own things, and they had powers, they had feats, they had everything was kind of laid out, and you had to choose or build your character. And they had several options, of course. We haven't really talked about mechanics today, but I don't think we really need to. But you could build your character like you would in a Marvel superhero game, more like fire blast or flight or invisibility or density control or something like that. And that was the first edition was like that. But then they came out later editions, and they went to this thing that's we're seeing going on in most role-playing games these days. It's just using keywords. So there is a blast power, and you decide what it looks like. And everything is done in that way, which is fine. It actually is better for the player, I guess. But I don't know. I'm old-fashioned. I kind of like the old way where I actually prefer rolling up random characters. No one wants to do that these days. Everything has to be exactly equal and exactly the same, and that's nonsense. Go read a comic book. They are not exactly the same. You got to tell me the Hulk is equal to Hawkeye?
No.
They have to find their place in the group. So I don't really like that thinking. That's coming from video games, I think. But I don't really like that thinking. I like things to be random. I like things to be asymmetrical. I
Yeah.
prefer that. It's more fun. But
GURPS.
yeah,
GURPS is a very, you get 100 points for your character or
yeah,
200 points. And yeah, you're right.
yeah. I prefer the old systems where you had to roll, like especially something like Villains and Vigilantes, where that was the most random thing you could ever find, right?
Yeah. And you're right.
Um,
You do find your ability. The group I'm playing now, there's a guy. He's doesn't have all the big powers of flight and all the big things, but he is a super sneak. So while everything else is going on, he'll be sneaking, and there's just what he can get into by himself. Is different than the big fighting lunks with all the power.
yeah,
There's another
yeah.
thing that I do. I just want to throw this out there. Have you guys ever used a whole bunch of different things like props? For instance, in the game now, I'll come up with a gazette. So at the end of the so-called week of gaming, we may only have one game for the so-called game week where they get involved
Yeah.
in stopping some villains. But then there's a Friday Gazette that comes out, and it will dictate a little write up that says what the characters did because the news choppers got to film it, and then there's other little things happening like the mayor's ball over in one corner, or there's a power outage on a different side of town, And during my Star Wars game, I had a little thing where they would get orders from the rebellion, and that would be given through also other embedded in other news ops. So there'd be a little news blurb and then this written communique. And so I'd hand them this piece of paper, and it would have a little artwork and a little write up on what it was. You guys use props and things like that?
Denali?
Yeah, sometimes it depends on the game and the group. So there's been times that, for like for Vampire the Requiem, the clan books can be used as in character props because it has information. So, and it reads like that. So you can always have that and say, hey, we found this book of information about vampires, and the hunters are going to go get it. And there you go, and everybody can read it, and that'd be the reward for rereading the stuff.
That's a good idea. I like it. Yeah.
Yeah.
What about you, Gary? Do you have props?
My friend, the guy who would be like the DM or whatever, he had like figurines and stuff like that, and he would paint them, and we would use those, but that was about it. So I didn't have any of my own, but that was it was starting to get really popular where they'd have like the pewter figures, and then they detail paint them and stuff, and they were looking
all right,
pretty cool.
All right. Well, sorry about that. My brother has actually come on, and he's come on loud and in charge. Hello there.
You're sorry that came on?
My grandkid was running around making some noise. Sorry about that.
Oh, it's okay, Grandpa.
we got a surprise visit.
This is my brother Tim.
Hello, everybody. Hello, Tim. How are you?
Hello, Tim.
Hello, Tim. Toolman Taylor.
And Tim is absolutely a role player as well.
Absolutely.
Oh, he's going to give us the real information on Chester.
Oh no, he's not. He knows better. Yeah, but no, Tim. We're talking about gaming, role playing gaming props and stuff. And Denali and Gary had mentioned the figurines and stuff, and of course we played those. I'm pretty good at painting those. It's about the only artistic skill I have. But I remember way back when I was playing, we didn't have any props. It was just dice and your paper and nothing else.
Yep.
That's how it used to be. How about you guys? You ever play games where you literally were just sitting down with your imagination and no toys on the table?
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Who are you asking?
I'm asking all of you.
Are you asking the chat? Or are you asking us? Yeah, that was mostly how it was. I mean, the figurines were just sort of like, we would start mapping out things, like we put graph paper down, and then we would start exploring, the area, and we'd pencil it in. We'd do stuff like that. Did you guys do that?
Yeah, sure, of
Oh.
course. Yeah.
You got to have a
Yeah.
map. Every great story has a map. If I pick up a book, even I want the book to have a map in it.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely. Mapping is always a fun part of D&D game. How about you, Tim?
Then
Do you
there's
remember?
then there's the player
do.
who
Yes.
will draw.
That's true. Yeah. How about you,
Go
Tim?
ahead,
Do you
Tim.
have remember any good map creations in any D&D games?
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of them that were fun, but they were all the ones that I ever did that were the most enjoyable. Were just ones that we made up. A DM came up with a good storyline, and yeah, it's like they're saying, we draw it out on graph paper, perhaps, even if we did that, and we would go through it. Go through the scenario, and they were great, a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know. Did you and I ever do any games together?
Yeah, we did some AD&D together back in the day, a little bit of Marvel as well. I always used to be Ursa Major, if you remember.
That's right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, you were Ursa Major. That's right. All
Yeah,
right. He's playing the enemy.
yeah, usually.
Cool. How about you guys? Any great map memories, Denali?
There was a Werewolf the Apocalypse, which was set in the Western, where the GM did the whole region as grids, and you could take over certain hexadecimal areas and claim as your own territory, kind of like a ranching frontier kind of idea. So it was kind of cool, like, and each hexadecimal had like a random encounter or some issue that your pack or whatever you wanted to do, your character would have to fulfill to claim it or something like that.
Oh, I see. How
Mhm.
about you, DeWolf?
My first D&D, now that you say that, I was thinking, no, not really. But now that I think way back, the first GM that we had, he would not show us a map. He would just tell us approximately how far we're going down this. It was a dungeon crawl, right? So it's a cave, it's a dungeon crawl. And so you had to do it. And there was a guy that had to, he was the map guy. We had to play another player, and he would be drawing out the map. And then as the GM described things, some of the other players would say, hey, you missed this thing he just said. And he's like, oh, okay, you're right. And he'd add that little maybe tunnel off to the right, and then we'd go left. And oh my goodness, the ability to try to map out what's being said versus looking at an actual real, mapped out map that the GM has that he's trying to describe, that was really interesting, because if you said, which I did, I mean, come on, I ended up being the slightly random guy. I ended up running away from them or something, and they're like, "Hey, you can't run that far ahead, and you can't do this, because we've got to go slow, and we got to map this place out."
I
And
see. So you were the
but I got
troublesome
scared or
player.
whatever.
I get it.
Yeah, I know I'm not
I
troublesome.
usually was as well. Always being
Yes, you.
told, no, you can't do that. Why not? The heck is what I want to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, my brother is always troublesome. Um,
Yeah.
but
But they
no,
didn't want to get lost. You could actually get lost in his game.
well, cartography is actually a big part of Dungeons and Dragons. I've seen people crazy serious about it. I actually mentioned that miniature painting is one of the few artistic things I'm good at. But actually, so now that we're talking about mapping, I'm actually pretty good at making maps too. You guys make maps? You ever make a map, Gary?
In the D&D game, we would, but I have made a map for Packinsland. Is that what you're talking about? I'm not sure. Just a map in
Any
general.
kind of map,
Oh,
just
that's
map making. Yeah.
I've made my own. I mean, it's not like an actual map maker, but just for getting my ideas down, where things are located in a story that I'm writing. Yeah, I have.
So are you going to include that map that you mentioned in the omnibus for the campaign for Packensland?
Oh, that'd be cool, Gary.
I could probably what I would do is it's really quick and dirty. It's just for placement. It isn't like this is a pretty map to look at. It's just so I can get my head wrapped around where things are taking place. So I probably, if I did it, I would go and clean it up, maybe do a more of an illustrated looking map. So yeah, I mean that we can do that.
Yeah, it'd be cool. Maps are always a nice thing to add. The chat over here is talking about their various experiences as well. That's cool. That's all cool. Oh, by the way, brother, this is the person who's drawing and talking is the one and only Gary Shipman, by the way. So you were
Okay.
in the
That's
presence
pretty
of
awesome.
you were in the presence of legend.
I think you're
Cool.
exaggerating.
Ah, come on,
No,
Gary,
Gary's
you're a
great.
great artist, man.
Thank you.
And we're all looking forward to Packman's Land.
Well, thank you. I am too, actually. It's going to be fun.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about when you're going to launch that? He's got an Indiegogo about to come up, everyone. I think we all know that. But why don't you go ahead and give us some information on that, Gary?
On the
On the
sketchbook?
sketchbooks, yeah.
Yeah, it looks like we're launching in about 10 days. I just talked to Brett, my printer. And I also talked with him about some of the things that you had mentioned,
Yeah.
Chester, about wanting to get some info. And he said that, yeah, he'd love to talk to you and give you any kind of help that he can. So he's going to send me over his information and I'll give that to you. But
That'd be great.
Yeah,
We'd love to have him on a chat as well, just to sit there and pick his brain, you know.
Yeah. But he really has a lot of information about how things work. And he said that there's some misunderstandings the way that sometimes people look at a printer versus a publisher. And he said typically the way people look at a publisher is that they're footing the bill. And the way that, like what we're doing, like with Comic Skater, or even just say Packens Land, what we're doing with Packens Land is I'm the publisher, but he would be like the printing consultant, and he would get like the best prices on printing, but really the publishing falls on me. So it would be like under my own label or whatever. So, and anybody else that would come in doing their own project, they would actually be the publisher, but he would be like a printing or a printer, a consultant. And he said that really that's probably the best way for everybody to go, is for them to maintain their own properties and, things like that.
That's interesting, because the community has a big push going on right now to unify into it under a single umbrella. But the actual publisher is suggesting the opposite. That's interesting.
Well, he's saying, I mean, if he was to do it as a publisher, he would have like his own label. Like it would be like, say, Image, for example. Image, they allow everybody to own their own properties. But the problem with Image is like it's not affordable. I mean, you're gonna people that are smaller, independent people who have maybe a good story or something like that they want to get out, and then you're going to someone like Image, they're just going to gobble up all the profits and leave the creator high and dry. But Image will survive. It's like, okay.
Of course, yeah. You printed under Image before, right?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
And that's the experience that I had with them too.
Okay, so not a good one. Were Marvel or DC any better?
I've never published with Marvel or DC, but the bottom line with these publishers is that they are going to get their money. It's about money, and they're going to get it. And they don't really care about the creator. It's about the bottom line,
Yeah, no, it makes sense. Well, it's cool.
Which is kind of funny that if they're all about the money, then they should be extremely worried why a large segment of their customer base are kind of revolting against them. That kind of boggles the mind.
You would think so, yeah. That is
Yeah.
true. Huh.
Yeah,
Well, definitely we should have him on and just have a chat in general. It'd be cool to talk to a publisher anyway. Probably another one we could
Well,
talk to would be Peter Samedi, and he has a lot of insight as well. He does the Alterna. But
does he own everything on his deal, or
hmm,
does he allow creators to own their stuff?
I
that would be
believe Peter said that he only published, but those are his. He doesn't own any of those properties. He has those
Creator owned.
creator published, under him.
yeah. There you go. All right.
Well, see, that may be a way to go. Maybe he's the guy.
Well, I was actually trying to push that myself, but Ethan came out and kind of squashed that hard. I mean, Ethan does not like newsprint, and that's what Peter prints under. He prints on the old newsprint style instead of the new glossy super page stuff. And Ethan came
It
out
makes
very
it
hard against it.
it makes it affordable.
It does.
Yeah. But not everything Ethan says is right. So,
No, but you understand the influence he has. He's got what, 80,000 followers?
yes,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
there's more people, and he's gonna follow where the wind blows. And if
True.
people are saying, "Hey, we want more distribution," and if that means getting newsprint to get those access in new markets, then he's gonna listen. I mean, he keeps iterating over and over. He follows what the customers wants.
That's true. He does.
And part of Span speaking this channel is kind of like saying, this is what we kind of want. We want more affordable. We can't be dropping $50-$100 every campaign for those things. It's great, but after a while you're going to exhaust everybody's pocket, so to speak.
Yeah, well, I think they're already kind of hitting that now, and of course, Ethan is a unique beast himself. Anyway, I mean, not everyone can go out and get make $500,000 on a Indiegogo, right?
The $600,000 man. Yep.
Yep.
So, do any of you know Peter? I'm not sure what his last name is. He does
Samedi.
the Alterna.
Peter Samedi. Yeah.
Do any of you know him personally, or
a little bit?
Contacting?
I have a little bit of communication with him. I wouldn't say I know him, but I've communicated with him some. I love that guy. He's really a sweet guy. He's a true comic book lover, and I think all publishers should be that way. And I think that's part of the problem. But only a little bit. Maybe someone knows him more intimately than I do.
The reason why I'm asking is maybe you could introduce me to him. Maybe there's something we could do together, because I'm more for making it affordable.
Yeah.
I'm more on that end of things. I don't want to. I mean, that's one of the things that really bothered me about comic books as it went from like the 80s into the, up, is the prices just started climbing. And now what are they now? Like $5 for I don't even know what.
Yeah, no, $5, some or more. Yeah, no, I could introduce you to Peter easily. Yeah, no problem. I'll do that.
Gary's my man here. Yes. So then what if we could get role-playing games made in newsprint comic book form? Then we could just you get little rules segments. I don't know.
No, that's a cool idea. Have a comic book.
It is a cool idea.
Role-playing system. And we just, throughout the comic, you're dropping the rules, and that's a good idea. I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That sounds like a moneymaker.
Yeah, we gotta write. Okay, write that down.
Okay, copyright that. Write that down, Denali. Nobody in the chat take it. You didn't hear that. You didn't hear that. Booster.
Yeah,
copyrighted, trademark 2018. Boom. There.
Yeah. There you go. No, that's a great idea. But no, I can introduce you to Peter very easily. I know him well enough for that. But he'd probably love to talk to you anyway. He's always looking for artists. Humphrey Bear.
So I've got
Humphrey Bear says, if you are at a Comic-Con, etc., and you meet a comic book pro, but he or she can't be live on your show, could you do an interview with him or her and show it on your channel later? Absolutely, Humphrey. Matter of fact, I will be going to Tokyo Comic Con this December, and I will be meeting with Mike S. Miller, and I will most certainly interview him. And I'm working on getting an actual press pass for that event so that I can live stream it. So I will keep you guys all up to date on that. But we might, yeah, go ahead, Gary.
Speaking of which, Mike just wrote me, and he's, I guess, Drawn and Quartered is starting, or he sent me a link. So I'm going to have to bail.
Yeah, no, we're ending to be on time for that. We have 15 minutes left, and then we got to get off, and everyone's got to run over there, I'm sure. That is the plan. So if you got to head out and go get ready, Gary, go right ahead. Thanks for coming on and joining us. It's always great to sit and chat with you and see your great art come together.
Yeah, it was good to hear you guys talk, and it was good to see you, DeWolf and Denali and Tim. Good to meet you.
Yeah,
and,
good to meet you as well.
Yeah, Gary.
You guys...
Hey, I've got Gary. Can I have one question?
Sure.
Okay. You mentioned the sketchbook. What for someone else who's been reading comic books and you're going to put out a sketchbook? What is the draw for me as a consumer to get your sketchbook? What is the different interest there?
If you're someone who's more in I mean, because comic books, it's both. It's writing and it's art. If you call it art, it's illustrations. If you're heavy into the illustration sides, like you just really like seeing images and things like that, that's what I do mostly. Now I do write as well, and I wrote Packens Land, and so what I'm trying to do with a sketchbook is I usually try to come out with one. I wanted to do them every year, but it didn't work out that way. And so it's been like every other year that I come out with one. And it just happens to be that right now the Indiegogo campaign thing is like something that is very much in everyone's consciousness. Like this is a way of doing it. And this is a way for me to get some work out that's already done. I don't have to create the work. It's already done. And I can also then slip Packens Land in there, because one of the perks is that we're going to reprint the first issue of Packens Land with a new cover, and it's going to be exclusive to this Indiegogo campaign. So it would be like an introduction to Packens Land, and then there's different stretch goals also that we're going to add, like a Packens Land gallery and things like that, and even Packens Land trading cards at different stretch goals. So there's more to it than just a sketchbook. Oh, there's also going to be a calendar, a Packens Land calendar.
Yes.
So it's going to be a lot of different things, and it's just to kind of see if we can generate some excitement about this property, about Packens Land. And I'm heavy on the art side of things. So a sketchbook, I have tons of images that I've done over the years, and I just like to get them into people's hands if that's something people would want. And it's just that's so I think that's maybe answering your question, I hope. If not,
yeah. A collection of artwork of a lot of different characters that you can see in exciting poses and areas.
Yeah. Well, of course, Gary, you are missing a very important piece, though. There should be a fat bear in a hat.
Always.
Or Quasar.
Quasar.
You ever drawn Quasar, Gary?
I may have.
Yeah. You should. Well, if you haven't, you should, I think. DeWolf would be very, very happy.
Here, so someone else will do it.
There you go. I do have a question from the chat, though. I want to respond to. Primark Sanguinius here says, so what do you guys think about everyone should draw on tonight's Drawn and Quartered? Because the way they do Drawn and Quartered, if you haven't seen it before, that's on Mike's Miller's channel, the Blacklist Universe. You should go check it out. It's amazing. But what they do is they ask the chat, who should we draw? And then they have 2 hours to go at it and get it done. Great artist over there doing that, and Gary's going to go over there and win again. I will be voting for Gary, I'm sure. So what character does everyone here and in the chat think we should go over and suggest to Mike for all those artists to hit? I'm sure DeWolf is going to say Quasar.
That's a good choice.
What do you think, Gary? You want to have like a have us go in and push up something you want on the sneak? We could be your ace in the hole.
Oh, nice.
It wouldn't. It doesn't matter to me very much. I mean, I'm
Ooh,
probably just going to
confidence.
do. No, it's not the confidence. I'm just going to do
How-
Captain America again. So I'm just going to keep doing Captain America.
Hey, that was a great Captain America, man. You won that
Yeah.
that one. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank
How
you.
about Harrison Ford from the Jack Ryan's series when he did the clear and present danger and all that stuff?
That might be cool.
Yeah, that'd be cool. I mean, whatever. I mean, I would say more. What do you guys want to see? You know.
I'm seeing Bumblebee over here. I'm seeing Solo. I'm seeing Cyberfrog. I
The
don't know if they
Shadow,
do that.
old school.
Oh, the Shadow. That would be awesome.
That would be a good one.
To see
Yeah.
the guys ink the shadow, the eye line and all that. Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
what
yeah,
we should do. Everybody on Mike's stream, hit the shadow, the shadow, the shadow.
Let's all jump
Yeah.
over there. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to
Well,
take off now. Thanks again for having me, and you guys have a good one. We'll talk to you
Thanks,
later.
Same to
easy,
you.
Gary.
Good luck.
Thanks
See
a
you
lot,
later,
man.
Gary.
Sure. Bye.
All right. Well, that was really nice having Gary Shipman on there and doing some drawing for us. He is amazing. Yeah, so Mike's stream is going to start in about 10 minutes, which is perfect because we're ending in 10 minutes. So today's theme was RPGs, the real RPGs, tabletop pen and paper. So let's go ahead and everyone give your last bit of comments on what do you think about RPGs or any ideas or memories or something like that. Since my brother is on here, let's let him go ahead and start.
Sure. Well, yeah, it's been a little bit since I've been able to get with a good group of people to really have a good campaign to run through. I have done it a little bit. I try to jump in when I can. There's a local place right over here, the comic book store, right down in town here, that a lot of kids come and sit and play and game, and that's a lot of fun too. There's one of the kids there. He's a really good DM. He comes up with really good storylines and fun stuff to go through. But like I was saying earlier, like my favorites are the ones where you don't have a book that you're following. It's all from somebody's imagination who has taken you on a journey and through an incredible story. Um, to me, those are the more fun ones to do. It's never the same. They're always different. It's always a new adventure. And that's what I like about it. Being able to go and experiment, you know, you get to build your own character, make them the way you want. You can try out different you know, well, you guys know all different types of people with different strengths and attributes. And yeah, I don't know. It's a good time. It's a great pastime. I've been trying to get my son to get into it, try to help him to get out of trouble and focus his energies in other ways. And he's been getting into it some too. And we've been having fun with it.
Yep, it
Always
is
good.
fun. It
Yeah,
is fun.
it is. It's always a
Cool.
good time.
All right. Well, DeWolf, what do you got to say?
I would first just encourage anyone to do so. And it can be hard, like you say, it can be hard to get involved in a group, to find individuals, in different areas. It's always just come down to what people I already knew that were role playing, or I caught some people just talking about it like we are now, except in an actual setting like work. And some people were just talking, and maybe they're talking about something akin to it. Like there's a movie coming out that has fighters and wizards in it. So that's an in to say, oh yeah, it sounds like D&D. Or another one where you're talking about superheroes because Marvel is out there today, and ask, hey, anybody ever role play? And maybe they have, and maybe they've thought of it before, and maybe they want to do it again. And there you go. Or you can go down to your comic store, which of course now is comics and games, or there's just game stores. And there's nowadays they have an entire room set up with tables. Go in, maybe intimidating, but nerds are nerds. You get nerds talking, you get nerds interested in something, and everything else goes out the window. They just want to get you involved and get playing. So I would just encourage anyone, if you haven't ever actually done tabletop dice rolling, it's so much different than anything else. So much more creative, on the fly. You don't get that with any other medium.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I think that deserves an amen.
Yeah.
Denali, man, let's hear something.
All right. No, it's all about having fun. It's just getting along with a group of friends. Like DeWolf said, it's all, if you have co-workers, that's a good bonding thing with co-workers, same interest. There's tons of RPGs, it doesn't have to be the traditional RPGs. There's Faith, and there's Shadowruns that was mentioned in the chat. There's whole tons of RPGs. The good thing about it is, you're using your imagination, you're interacting, sharpening your skills, and having fun, and that's the most important part of it. So do what you can to, introduce people to the system, and have fun along the way. It's okay to make mistakes, okay to fall on your face, and it's okay to allow your characters to see consequences.
Yeah, dude.
So just be kind to each other and have fun.
Oh, excellent. Thanks, Denali. I'll give my little opinion on that in a second, but Primarch Sanguinius has an interesting question. I think it should be asked. What is your favorite RPG setting? I would say for me, it's probably I don't know, the Gazetteers, I guess, Mystara. What do you think, Tim?
That's not bad. God, I don't know, a favorite? I don't really have one, I suppose.
How about you, DeWolf? What's your favorite setting?
Wow, that really is difficult, because
It is, yeah.
Star Wars is so rich, and it gives you so much to play with. But at the same time, I almost think that there's some areas there that you can't get into. And it's over, and the whole feel of Star Wars is always overpowering it. My favorite setting, I created a setting using Joe Devers' Lone Wolf adventure books.
Oh yeah,
and
those
put
are
it
good.
into and I put it into GURPS, and I ran characters through it. So, I'm gonna have to be gonna go with that. It's a little bit driven by myself, but it would also mean that it's low power, low magic, medieval, but still not D&D.
Yeah, no, homebrew's good. Denali, what's your favorite setting?
Usually how the writer cheats, like it's the one that I'm playing right now.
Okay.
But I'm partial to steampunk and the
Okay.
Victorian areas kind of gameplays there, because there's always good.
Yeah.
Enough for everybody around to grasp on, and it's not too medieval and it's not too modern. Just it's that
good.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, cool. Well, thank you all for coming today. It was a great stream. We had a lot of fun. We talked about a lot of things. I think these Tuesday Bugbears basements are working out really well, especially because when we end, the drawn and quartered art drawing tournament starts, and I think that's perfect. And I'm sure everyone's going to jump over there and see that. And if you haven't heard about it, please do. It's on the Blacklist Universe. Matter of fact, Humphrey Bear, why don't you go ahead and drop a link to Mike's channel? Also drop a link in there for Gary as well. Down below, you'll see that you have a the FanSpeak Facebook group link. Please go join that. And we have a lot of things we're working on doing over there for FanSpeak in general. I've also left my Twitter if that's more if that's easier for you. Just keep in mind that Fan Speak is about having the fans speak. And as you saw, we had a bunch of fans on today, and our main show is on Fridays at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, as with Bugbear's Basement is also 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So please join us on Friday and join us next week. Keep in mind that this community is all about happiness and getting along with each other and building something new in this indie renaissance that's going on in the comic book industry. So I thank you all for coming. If you haven't played an RPG, go do that now. So good night, everybody, and I will see you over on Mike's channel.
Aloha.
Good night, everybody.